Hello, everybody, and welcome into another news flash here at the Hockey Writers. Of course, I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by Jacob Billington. Jacob, it looks like the trade deadline has started. We're on Saturday, about a week, less than a week now, away from the March 7th deadline, and we've got a big trade. There's been a few trades actually today, but this is the biggest one, and that is the Blackhawks trading Seth Jones to the Florida Panthers for Spencer Knight and a first-round pick. And they're also, of course, this was always going to be a part of it, salary retention. 26% of Jones's contract will be retained by the Blackhawks. And Jones still has quite a few years still on his contract. So what do you think about this trade? It was probably going to happen. And the Panthers get a pretty solid defenseman to bolster their D-core here.
Well, first of all, I think after Jones's comments to the media last week about just that there was no progression with the team and all this kind of stuff, I am fully on board with players being able to speak their mind. And we criticize players for saying things like that, but then we're also like, how come none of these guys are themselves? And how come they always just say pucks in deep and fast changes and just the cliche stuff? So I think that he should be allowed to say that. However, that could have really impacted his trade value and the ability to trade him. So I don't think that was the time and place for it. But here we are today. It ended up working out. And I don't know if there was ever an official trade request made, but I think Kyle Davidson and Seth Jones both kind of agreed that maybe it's best if we move on from each other. And yeah, he's got 5 more years left. And it's a little bit over $7 million that he'll be being paid by the Panthers. 9.5 total, but Chicago is retaining 25%. I'll start with Chicago on this. The return, I think, is a lot better than most expected. So Spencer Knight, we just talked about him in our deal or no deal. Fantastic goaltender. I don't know how that he is only 23 years old. I feel like he's been in the NHL and AHL for the past 7 years. But Spencer Knight, he's been pretty dominant in the AHL and really good in the NHL. I wouldn't say dominant, but really good in the NHL, which is really important for a 23-year-old goaltender. You don't get that very often. He's got 1 year left at $4.5 million. He's a fantastic goaltender. So he's going to kind of take over. People forget that Chicago's goaltending situation was supposed to be a lot better than it is. So they have Laurent Brossoit, who's been injured all season, and he would have changed the dynamic of that crease. Peter Mrazek had a good season last year, but neither of them are Spencer Knight, and neither of them are young enough to be the goalie of the future. So that's what you're getting in Spencer Knight. And then for the first-round pick, I mean, you always want a first-round pick.
Yeah.
It's going to be closer to a second-round pick, just with the Florida Panthers being juggernauts. But a first-round pick is always a first-round pick.
Yeah, first-round pick's always good to get. I mean, you never know. The Blackhawks could actually trade it too. I don't think so. I mean, this is building up assets. I mean, this is something that you're wanting to get in these deals, and I'm actually surprised they got it first. Really, especially with Spencer Knight being in there. But I mean, it's a first-round pick, like you said, is always a good asset to get, and Blackhawks are always out for building up first-round picks, and they seem to be doing that. The last few years, they've been having a couple in the first round and just building up that prospect pool. So getting rid of Seth Jones and this big salary, which I think is a big deal, even though they are retaining a bit of it, a lot of it is not on their books anymore. So pretty good for them to have.
Yeah, for sure. And with the cap going up, I mean, you don't want to waste 5 years retaining like $800,000 or $1 million. You don't want to waste that, because is that really worth whatever extra asset you're going to get out of it? So with the cap going up, it makes more sense to do like $2 million, $2.5 million if you're doing terms. So, but on the Panther side of things, it probably hurts a little bit to move Knight. I'll admit I don't know what their prospect depth looks like in net. You might know a bit better than that with prospect corner, but I can't think of any goaltenders that they have that are coming up that are at least stand out to me. But you have Sergei Bobrovsky. He signed for at least another season, and he makes a lot of money, whatever. But he just won you a Stanley Cup, took you to a Stanley Cup final before that. you're okay with having Sergei Bobrovsky as your goaltender. You don't need Spencer Knight. And if the Panthers were kind of on the downswing, like maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe you hold on to Spencer Knight because you want that next wave of young guys coming up. But right now, the Panthers are just, let's win this season. Doesn't matter what happens after that. And then, of course, draft picks are just magic beans. They're fine trading those. But bringing in Seth Jones is a game changer. So on the right side, like they've got Aaron Ekblad, who is not the Aaron Ekblad that we once all saw playing in the NHL, but he's still good. He's still a top 4 guy, maybe not elite, but Seth Jones will add a lot more depth because right now on the right side, they have Dmitry Kulikov and Nate Schmidt playing behind Ekblad. You want a lot better than that. All credit to them. They've been playing fantastic, and the defense has been pretty good this season in Florida. But I think a big thing is that they need more offense out of their back end. And while Seth Jones isn't Quinn Hughes or Erik Karlsson or Cale Makar, he's on track for 50 points this year, and that's pretty regular for him. He could even hit like the 60, 65 points, and nobody would be too surprised. So I think that it makes a lot of sense for Seth Jones to come in and kind of just add a lot of depth to that blue line. And for $7 million, he's also pretty good defensively. He's not Jacob Slavin. He's pretty good physically. He's not like a Brady Tkachuk physicality. He's just good at everything. And nothing really stands out as an elite skill, but he's good at everything except for, I would say, the skating and agility is a big struggle for him at times. But Florida plays a really physical and slow-paced game, I find. Not that the Panthers are a slow team, but they play that way. And so I think Jones will fit into that really well.
And like you're saying about offense, they lost Brandon Montour, which was a pretty big part of their offense from the blue line. And he's having a really good season in Seattle in his first year there. So he's, losing him. And then, Seth Jones isn't putting up tons of points lately. He's still putting up decent amount. So I actually really like it for the Panthers, them getting Jones, because it does bolster their blue line. Funny because we were talking about the mock trade with Erik Karlsson going to the Panthers and talking about pretty much like that. So, I think Jones is a big. I didn't think the Panthers would be going after Jones, but it does make sense to upgrade the blue line for them too.
For sure.
All right, before we close this video, we got to talk about the other trade that went down today, one of the other ones, and this is the Predators trading Gustav Nyquist to the Minnesota Wild. And Nyquist did play for the Wild. Didn't play a lot a few seasons ago, but they get him back, and maybe he'll be able to make a bigger impact because he's healthy this time. So what do you think about that trade?
Yeah, this is the second time in 3 years the Wild are bringing him in at the deadline. Actually, it was 3 years ago yesterday, actually. So pretty well same game plan. But yeah, he only played 3 games, then his season was done. So it's hard to really fault him on any performance there. But since coming to the Predators, he's been outstanding. He scored 75 points last season in 81 games, I believe it was. Like, who expected that out of a 34-year-old Gustav Nyquist? And I also very surprised that he's 35 years old now.
Yeah.
I thought he was like 31, 32. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense for the Predators to move on from him and bring in a second-round pick. Makes just as much sense for the Minnesota Wild, who are really looking to make an impact in the playoffs this year. And they don't really have much salary cap room, especially with the Suter and Parise buyouts just here for one more season, being this season, after this season. And yeah, to get him for 50% of his I think it's like 1.6 something. You absolutely do that. Any team in the league would want Gustav Nyquist at that price.
Especially what he did last season. He's obviously way out of that pace this season. He's not having as good of a season. Lots of Predators aren't. Nyquist going to the Wild, maybe he can make a bit of an impact. It's going to be interesting to see what the Wild do at the deadline. They've been, Brock Besser could maybe, he's a lot more salary, so I don't know how they're going to fandangle that. But if that happens, they could still be in the market for some players unless Nyquist is the guy that they got, and that's it. But we'll see how that all goes. But this seems to be the beginning, and we'll keep going here in the next week before the deadline. I'm sure there's going to be some more trades within probably in the next few days, because there's some chatter starting to get going. So thanks, Jacob, for coming on, talking a couple trades that did go down today. The big one being Seth Jones. We'll see if any others come down, but make sure to check out everything at thehawkriders.com. We've got breaking news stories of all the big trades that come down that happen. And we also got, of course, the reaction articles from all the other writing teams as those trades go too. So be sure checking that out. Follow us on Twitter for all or X for all the stuff too, on Facebook, and of course the Substack. But until our next video, we'll see you next time.